Hi everyone and welcome back to my CISSP video series. In this video series, we will be diving deep into the CISSP exam preparation, breaking down the key concepts and providing in-depth explanation of the questions and answers. I am a cybersecurity professional having about 15 years of experience in the field. I have obtained over a dozen international certifications including the CISSP, CCSP and CISA. I am glad to share my knowledge and experience with you guys through these videos. In today's video, we will be tackling 50 practice questions from Domain 3 of the CISSP exam, Security Architecture and Engineering. So grab your notes and let's break down these questions to help you on your CISSP journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell for more content like this. So let's get started. Question number 1. Sarah recently moved an encrypted hard drive to a new device. She knows the password but cannot access the data. Which hardware security feature might be causing this? And the options are option A, NIA cap, option B, TCB, option C, TPM, and option D, RSA. So out of all these, the hardware security feature is basically the TPM or Trusted Platform Module. So this is the correct answer. So what is TPM? So TPM is basically a hardware chip that is embedded inside the device such as the computer motherboard. And when you encrypt a hard drive or data with this TPM, then this can be decrypted with the same TPM or with the same private key. So when Sarah moved the hard drive from the original computer that has the TPM chip to another computer, she cannot decrypt it unless she use the same TPM chip, and you cannot remove the TPM chip from the motherboard. Also, you cannot extract that private key. So in case if you encrypt your hard drive or your data with this TPM chip using this private key, and if your hard drive is stolen, then it is of no use to the person that stole the hard drive because he or she cannot get this private key unless he also or she also steals your device or the server or the computer as well. So a TPM is a hardware security technique that stores an encryption key on a chip on the motherboard. This prevents unauthorized access to encrypted data when the hard drive is moved to a different computer. Question number 2. Emily is designing a physical security infrastructure for a new, largely unstaffed facility. She is using motion detectors. What additional control can she use for physical presence verification? And the options are option A, CCTV, option B, IPS, option C, turnstiles, and option D, Faraday cage. So the IPS in intrusion prevention system, it has nothing to do with the physical security. Turnstiles are for the control of the physical entrance. Turnstiles are used to control the physical entry to a facility, but they cannot be used to verify the physical presence. Similarly, Faraday cages are used for electromagnetic radiation blockage. So this is also not relevant. So the correct answer is the CCTV cameras. So closed circuit television or CCTV system can act as a secondary verification mechanism for physical presence. When a motion alarm sounds, security officials can use CCTV to view the interior of the facility and determine the current occupants and their activities. This provides additional information to assess the situation and take appropriate actions. Question number 3. Emily is concerned about the security risk when a device is lost or stolen. Which cryptographic goal address this concern? So as we studied in our question number 1, You can encrypt the device, and when it is lost or stolen, then it will be of no use to the user, and it will prevent the confidentiality of your data. So when you encrypt the device using cryptographic technique such as encryption, then you preserve the confidentiality of your data on the device. So the correct answer here is the confidentiality. So the greatest risk when a device is lost or stolen is that sensitive data contained on the device will fall into the wrong hands. Confidentiality protects against the risk by ensuring that data remains private and cannot be accessed by unauthorized parties. Non-repudiation is about proving the originator's identity. Authentication verifies the identity of user or system. Integrity ensures that data has not been modified. Question number 4. Emma is responsible for web application security. Where can she find a list of common web application vulnerabilities? So we are specifically talking about web application vulnerabilities, and the options are option A, CVE, option B, NSA, option C, OWASP, and option D, CSA. So the CVE is basically common vulnerability exposure. It contains the vulnerability, but it contains all type of vulnerabilities, not specifically web application vulnerabilities. NSA is not a relevant term here. NSA is basically the agency, and OWASP is here the W basically stands for web. So this is the correct answer. CSA is basically Cloud Security Alliance. So our correct option is OWASP. So OWASP has the list of most common web application vulnerabilities, also known as top 10 most common web application vulnerabilities. So the Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, annually publishes the top 10 list of the most common web application security vulnerabilities. This list is widely used by developers and security professionals for education and training. Many web application security testing products are based on the OWASP vulnerabilities. Question number 5. Sophia's organization recently identified instances of privilege creep. Which security principle was violated? So, privilege creep is basically the accumulation of privileges over time, and it happens when the user changes roles. He or she moves from one role to the other, and basically he or she retains the privileges of the previous roles as well as gets new privileges according to their new roles. So that scenario is known as privilege creep. And why this happens? The options are option A, keep it simple, option B, fail securely, option C, trust but verify, and option D, least privilege. And the correct option is basically least privilege. So the principle of least privilege states that employees should have only the minimum necessary privileges for their jobs. Privilege creep occurs when employees accumulate unnecessary permissions, violating the least privilege principle. The trust but verify principle emphasizes the importance of auditing. The fail securely principle advocates for designing systems to fail in a secure state. The keep it simple principle promotes simplicity in security controls and technologies. Question number 6. Lily is trying to implement a defense in depth strategy. Which combination of controls would be most effective? And the options are option A, data loss prevention and multi-factor authentication. Option B, network firewall and host firewall. Option C, encryption of email and intrusion detection. Network intrusion detection. Option D, cloud access security brokers and security awareness training. So each of these options have basically two types of security controls, and the defense in depth is basically layers of defense to protect your assets. So the purpose is that if one layer is compromised, the attack will be or may be stopped at the second layer, and if the second layer is compromised, we may have the third layer and so on. And the security controls at each layer may be same but applied at different levels and at different layers. So the correct option here is basically the network firewall and the host firewall. So both the purpose of both these control is same, but they are implemented at different layer. Network firewall may be implemented here at the first layer at the perimeter, while the host firewall may be here. So if that first layer is compromised and also the subsequent layers, we have another control of the same type at another layer. So that is the concept of defense in depth, that the controls may be same, but they are at different layers and at different points of your organization, such as this picture shows the different layers, the perimeter security, such as in this case, our network firewall will be applied here. Then the network security. The network security also may have an additional firewall in addition to the perimeter security firewall. Then the server and the endpoints, such as we saw, the host firewall will be installed over here. And after the host, inside the host, we have the application and user security, user accounts. And at the last, we have the most precious of all, that is the data security. We may also have security control applied over here as well. So the defense in depth principle advocates for using multiple overlapping security control to achieve the same control objective. So the key point is same control objective. Network and host firewalls are example of such control, as they both aim to limit network traffic. The combination of encryption of email and network intrusion detection does not fully embody defense in depth, as they don't serve the same control objective. Similarly, CISSP, that is Cloud Access Security Broker, and Security Awareness Training, as well as DLP and multi-factor authentication, don't represent overlapping controls for the same objective. Question number 7. MIA is planning to implement a UPS for a rack of servers. Which power issue might a UPS not be able to protect against for an extended period? And the options are: option A, fault. So these are different types of power issues. Option A is fault, option B is blackout, option C is noise, and option D is sag. So UPS is basically used for short-term power issues such as fault, noise, and sag. Sag is a short-term dip in voltage or short-term low voltage. Noise is any interference inside the power. Fault is any short-term fault inside your power equipment or power mechanism. While the blackout is basically a long-term or long duration absence or outage of power. So UPS is not intended for long-term power outages. For this, basically for blackout, we have genset. So the correct option is basically blackout. So UPSs are designed to protect against short-term power losses like power faults. They can also protect against sags and noises. However, UPSs have limited life batteries and might not be able to maintain continuous operation during extended blackouts. Question number 8. In a virtualized computing environment, what component is responsible for enforcing separation between guest machines? And the options are option A, protection manager, option B, kernel, option C, guest operating system, and option D, hypervisor. So since we are talking about the virtualized computing environment, the most appropriate term is the hypervisor. So what is a hypervisor? Hypervisor is basically responsible for managing access to physical hardware and ensuring isolation between different virtual machines running on the same physical platform. So this is how hypervisor works or looks like. So at the base we have the physical hardware. The hypervisor is basically, you can say that it is an OS, and it is installed directly on the bare metal server or hardware. So traditionally, we usually install operating systems such as Linux or Microsoft Windows on these servers, but in case of virtualization, we install the hypervisor, and that type of hypervisor is known as type 1 hypervisor, where we install the hypervisor directly on the bare metal hardware. And these are some popular hypervisors such as the Hyper-V from Microsoft, Oracle VM, and the VMware hypervisor, that is ESXi and vSphere. And on top of that hypervisor, then we have virtual machines. We can have multiple virtual machine, and each virtual machine may have different operating system as per our requirements, such as we may have Microsoft Windows, we may have Linux, Red Hat, etc. All these on the same, they may be on the same physical machine, on a single physical machine. So that's the purpose of hypervisor, that it separates the guest machines. These are the guest machines from each other, and it also ensures the distribution of hardware to these virtual machines. Question number 9. Which of the following is not a characteristic of a hashing algorithm? So what is hashing algorithm? Hashing algorithm is basically a one-way function. One-way function means that there is an input and there is an output. What does one way means? That you cannot produce the input from the output. It only gives you the output from a given input, and you cannot reverse engineer it. So the answer is already highlighted. Let me go through the options. Option A, it is nearly impossible to find two inputs with identical hash value. Yes, this is true. They require a cryptographic key. No, that's not accurate. The hashing algorithm or hashing does not require an encryption or a cryptographic key. They accept variable length input and they cannot be reversed. So the input can be of variable length. Let's suppose input may be 28 bit, 1000 bit. But let's suppose if our hashing algorithm is of 256 bit, then the output will always be 256 bit, irrespective of the input length. So for the 28 bit, it will produce a 256 bit length of hash, and as well as for 1000 or even 2000 bit, it will produce the same 256 bit length of hash. So that's these are the characteristics of hashing algorithm, and this is only this requires only a hashing algorithm such as, let's suppose, SHA-256. We don't use any key. with that algorithm. So hash function operate without any need for secrecy, so a cryptographic key is not necessary for their use. We do not encrypt the hash. Question number 10. Which cryptographic concept supports the notion that cryptographic algorithms should be publicly accessible for scrutiny? And the options are option A, defense in depth, option B, Heisenberg principle, option C, security through obscurity, and option D, Kirchhoff's principle. And the correct option is the Kirchhoff's principle. And what does this principle say? It says that the cryptographic algorithm, such as let's suppose AES, this should be publicly available for scrutiny so that it can be analyzed for any backdoors or for any weaknesses and vulnerabilities, including other things such as hardware. The only thing that need to be kept secret is the cryptographic or encryption key. Rest everything should be available for public scrutiny. So Kirchhoff's principle asserts that a cryptographic system must remain secure even if all details of the system aside from the key are publicly known. So if you disclose everything except the key, then the system should hold its strength and it should not be compromised in any way, and that shows the strength of the encryption algorithm. Question number 11. Eva is trying to reduce her organization's liabilities. How can a data retention policy help? And the options are option A, by ensuring that unneeded data is not retained. Option B, by reducing the cost of data storage required by law. Option C, by ensuring that incriminating data is destroyed. And option D, by ensuring that data is securely wiped so it cannot be restored for legal. And the correct option is that Eva can reduce her organization liabilities by ensuring that unneeded data is not retained and deleted. And how will this ensure that liabilities are reduced? Because it will do so by reducing the cost of retaining the unneeded data as well as reducing the chances of exposure. If you don't keep the unneeded data, you won't have the chance or you won't have the probability of its exposure. So in that way you can reduce your organization's liability. So a data retention policy helps ensure that out data is purged, reducing potential discovery cost. Many organizations have strict retention policies to minimize storage cost and the amount of discoverable data. While data retention policies help manage data, they are not designed to destroy incriminating data. Legal requirements for data retention must still be met. Question number 12. Emilia is responsible for ensuring data is retained and maintained for as long as needed. Which term describes this process? And the options are option A, data storage policy, option B, asset maintenance, option C, data storage, and option D, record retention. So the specific term used for retaining the data and maintaining it as long as it is needed is record retention. Record retention is the practice of preserving and maintaining data for as long as it is required. A data storage policy outlines the rules for data storage. Data storage refers to the actual physical or digital storage of data. Asset maintenance is a non-information security process for maintaining physical assets. Question number 13. Olivia wants to identify sensitive data like social security numbers, credit card numbers within her organization's existing data. Which tool is most suitable? And the options are option A, manual searching, option B, sensitive data scanning tool, option C, asset metadata search tool, and option D, data loss prevention tool, DLP. And the correct option is sensitive data scanning tool. So the sensitive data scanning tools are designed to scan for and flag sensitive data types based on known patterns and structures. This makes them effective for identifying well-defined data types like social security numbers and credit card numbers. Manual searching is impractical for large datasets. Asset metadata needs to be established beforehand, and data loss prevention system focus on data in transit rather than data at rest. Question number 14. Emma is a database administrator responsible for implementing data policies and managing data structures. Which data role best fits her responsibilities? So we are talking about day-to-day responsibilities of implementing data policies and managing data structure. So what is the specific role that specifies this type of responsibilities? And the options are option A, data custodian, option B, data user, option C, data processor, and option D, data owner. So data owner is basically the actual owner of the data, and owner does not himself or herself do this task. Rather than these tasks are delegated by the data owner to other roles. Data processor is a third party, most of the time third party, that processes data on behalf of the data owner or data controller. Data user is basically a user that uses data and does not have to do anything with these tasks. And data custodian is basically the role that deals with the day-to-day responsibilities such as implementing data security policies and managing data structure. So data custodian is the correct answer. A data custodian is responsible for the technical environment, including database structures and data policy implementation. While some organizations might overlap data roles, a data custodian's primary responsibility is technical. Data owners and data stewards have broader responsibilities, and data users simply use data. Question number 15. Sophia is replacing sensitive data with a randomized string of characters that remains consistent for each instant. Which technique is she using? And the options are option A, anonymization, option B, tokenization, option C, DES, and option D, masking. And the correct option is that the process in which we replace sensitive data with tokens that remains consistent for each instance is known as tokenization. And this is how tokenization works. So this is the original data. It is basically a sensitive PII data, personally identifiable information. We have first name John, Doe, last name, email address, and social security number. And then we tokenize this data. Tokenization means that we generate token for each of these pieces of information. And then we have a table that relates this token to the original data. So when we say that it remains consistent for each instance, it means that whenever we are when you are using this tokenization data in multiple instances, and whenever we needs to call the original data, each time it will remain consistent. Whenever we call this token, it will always relate to John, whichever instance we are using it. So that's the concept of tokenization. So tokenization replaces sensitive data with random strings of characters that is token that can be securely looked up. Anonymization removes all personally identifiable information, making it impossible to re-identify individuals. Data masking obscures some but not all data. Pseudonymization uses aliases to replace personal information. Question number 16. Richard's company is looking into buying a web-based email service from a provider and shutting down its internal email server to save money. What type of cloud computing solution is Richard's company exploring? And we have the options. Option A, PaaS, platform as a service. Option B, IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Option C, SaaS, software as a service. And option D, COS or compute as a service. So in PaaS, basically the user have its own software, and it is basically the organization, the cloud provider gives you the platform, the development platform, and the user then develops its own applications and uses it. So that is not thus suitable option, because we will be using the web-based email service of the provider. Infrastructure as a service, here it is here user have more features and customization. The user is given compute such as VMs, and user have the ability to install its own operating system, and upon operating system install its own applications. So again, this option is not relevant because we are talking about web-based email service from the provider. Software as a service is basically the type of cloud computing where the cloud provider give you the software application ready-made inside the cloud, and the user only uses it. So this is the correct option. Compute as a service is again similar to the infrastructure as a service. So the correct option is basically software as a service. So this scenario involves a vendor supplying a fully operational web-based application which classifies it as a software as a service. In contrast with infrastructure as a service, compute as a service, and platform as a service, the customer is responsible for supplying their own software. Since the vendor is providing the email software in this case, none of these other options are applicable. Question number 17. Which of the following system assurance processes involve an independent third-party review of a system controls which can be relied upon by various organizations? And the options are: option A, verification; option B, accreditation; option C, definition; and option D, certification. So we are talking about the review of a third party. So certification is basically the review of controls, but it does not basically involve the review by third party. It shows that controls are reliable, but it does not involve the review from third party. Definition is not relevant. Accreditation basically deals with the acceptance of this system or the control by the organization administration. Verification is the correct term where the controls are verified by the review through review of third party. So the correct option is verification. The verification process is akin to certification as it confirms security controls. However, verification often extends further by utilizing a third-party testing service and producing results that multiple organizations can rely on. Accreditation, on the other hand, is the management's formal acceptance of an evaluated system rather than an assessment of the system itself. Question number 18. Wally Widgets keeps total sales volume data restricted as a competitive secret, but shipping clerks have full access to order records to complete transactions. Recently, a shipping clerk compiled all individual sale records for a quarter from the database and calculated the total sales volume. What type of attack took place? And the options are option A, aggregation, option B, social engineering, option D, data diddling, and option D, inference. So the aggregation and inference are basically the database attacks. Social engineering is an attack where the human intelligence or human are socially engineered through disclosing the sensitive information. Inference is basically the deduction of information from some other information. It involves deduction or doing some types of analysis. Aggregation basically here is the correct term where you take large sums of small informations and combine them to or aggregate them to make a huge record of the information and make the sense of all the information. So here, since we are talking about compiling individual records to calculate the total sales volume, so that type of attack is known as aggregation. So an aggregation attack occurs when someone uses their access to smaller authorized pieces of information to assemble a broader picture which they do not have permission to view. Question number 19. During a third-party vulnerability scan, Daniel's employer found that the embedded system used to manage the company's new buildings have a significant remote access vulnerability. The manufacturer is no longer in business and no patch or update is available. What should Daniel suggest her employer do about the numerous vulnerable devices? And the options are option A, reverse engineer the devices and create an internal patch. Option B, shut down all devices. Option C, replace every device with a different model. And option D, move the devices to a secure and isolated network segment. So reverse engineering the devices and creating an internal patch, this might be not possible because these are third party or vendor devices. Shutting down devices does not make sense because you are giving up all your company functionality and services. Replacing it is also not a viable solution because it will be cost prohibitive. And moving the devices to a secure and isolated network so that it cannot be easily compromised and it also does not infect other devices is the viable and most suitable solution. So the best course of action is to relocate the devices to a secure and isolated network segment. This allows the devices to maintain their functionality while minimizing the risk of them being compromised. The other options either result in significant new cost or eliminate the device's intended functionality. Question number 20. Alice sent a message to Bob. Bob wants to prove to Charlie that the message he received indeed originated from Alice. Which cryptographic goal is Bob trying to accomplish? And the options are option A, integrity, option B, confidentiality, option C, authentication, and option D, non-repudiation. So we are talking about the authenticity of the message that proves that it is sent by Alice. And this feature is known as non-repudiation. So non-repudiation is achieved when the recipient can prove to third party that the message indeed came from the claimed sender. And this diagram shows how the non-repudiation works. So this is the sender. In our case, let's suppose this is Alice and this is the receiver is Bob. So how does this work in terms of cryptography? So the Alice generates her own public-private key pair. So the public key is basically shared with Bob since it is public, and the private key is kept by Alice with herself. It is not shared with anyone. So the message that she wants to send, it is signed with her private key. Signing means basically encrypting it. And when you sign the message with your private key, it is known as signature. Alice also sends the message in clear text to the receiver, or in this case Bob. When the Bob receives the message, so remember this the feature of the public and private key pair, that when you encrypt a message with a public key, it can only be decrypted with the private key of the pair, and if you encrypt it with the private key, it can only be decrypted with the public key. So when the signature is received by Bob, since Bob has the public key of the Alice, it will use the public key to decrypt this message. And since Bob also received the message in clear text, he will compare this message as well as this one that he decrypted uses Alice public key, and if they both are the same, it means that it proves two things. First, that the message is intact, it is not changed, and the second, that this message is indeed sent by Alice. Why? Because only Alice public key can decrypt a message that is encrypted by Alice private key, and since the Alice private key is only with Alice, that's why it is the Alice who sent the message. Question number 21. Mike is selecting a cryptographic algorithm for his organization and needs one that supports the creation of digital signatures. Which of the following algorithm would fulfill these requirements? So if you understood the previous question, this question is also related. So what type of algorithm is used for creating digital signature? So we have the options triple dash, AES, blowfish, and RSA. So the common feature between these three algorithms is that they all are symmetric algorithms. Symmetric algorithm is one in which the sender and receiver have the same key, or the same key is used for encryption and decryption, while the RSA is basically asymmetric algorithm, also known as public private key algorithm. So as we studied in the previous question, the asymmetric or public cryptography or public private key algorithm is basically used to create digital signatures. RSA in asymmetric cryptographic algorithm that is widely used for digital signatures. It involves a pair of keys, that is a public key and a private key. The public key is used to verify signatures, while the private key is used to create them. Question number 22. Gary is looking for a technology to help apply consistent security settings across numerous mobile devices in his organizations. Which type of following technology would be most suitable for this task? So we are talking about consistent security setting across mobile devices. And the options are IDS, option B MDM, mobile device management, option C SIEM, security incident event management, security information and event management, and option D IPS, intrusion prevention system. So IDS does not involve the employment of security settings, same as IBS. SIEM is used to gather security logs from devices. It is not used for applying security settings. So the correct option is basically MDM, mobile device management. So the mobile device management is a centralized mechanism where you apply the as we in our case consistent security setting or configurations, policies, and other features such as you can remotely track or remotely wipe the mobile devices, and these all are done through a centralized console. So that's why these settings are consistent across all devices. You can read the explanation by pausing the video. Question number 23. MATS organization has adopted a zero trust network architecture. In this model, which of the following criteria would be least appropriate for granting a subject access to resource? So you grant subject access to resource after its verification and authentication. So which one of these is least suitable for granting access to a subject or least suitable for authentication? And the options are option A, two-factor authentication, option B, IP address, option C, password, and option D, biometric scan. So the two-factor authentication, passwords, and biometric all gives us some form of authentication, while the IP address is the least appropriate for granting or for using it as an authentication mechanism to grant access to resources. So in a zero trust network architecture, access decisions should not rely on a system's location such as IP address. Therefore, using an IP address for access control is the least appropriate option. While other criteria like passwords, two-factor authentication, and biometric scans align with zero trust principle, as they focus on verifying the identity of users rather than their network location. Question number 24. After addressing a high temperature alarm due to component failure in the primary HVAC, heat, I think HVAC stands for heat, ventilation, and air conditioning system, what should Mike consider to prevent similar issues in the future? And the options are option A, redundant cooling systems, option B, swamp coolers, option C, a closed loop chiller, and option D, relocating the data center to a colder climate. So remember, whenever there is the component, the hardware component or software component always fail. It is common in IT and in all other devices, but how to prevent this is to have redundant components so that if one component fails, the other component can take over. So the correct option here is that redundant cooling system could have prevented the high temperature alarm. So if one cooling system fails, the redundant cooling system can take over and continue the HVAC work or HVAC system. To ensure that a single system failure does not bring the data center offline, KIM should implement redundant cooling systems. A well-designed data center should have backup system for critical infrastructure components such as power, cooling, and network connectivity. This redundancy helps prevent disruptions and maintain operational stability. Question number 25. In transport layer security, that is TLS, which type of key is used to encrypt the actual content of communication between a web server and a client? And the options are option A, server's private key, option B, client's public key, option C, ephemeral session key, and option D, server's public key. So remember that the actual content or the data is not encrypted with the public key or the private key. It is, sorry, let me get back. It is the session key or ephemeral session key that is used to encrypt the actual data or the content. The public and private key are also used, but they are used to exchange this session key between the client and the server. It is known as the ephemeral key because it is only used for the current session, and whenever the session is over, a new session is created for the new session. In TLS, the actual content of communication between a web server and a client is encrypted using an ephemeral symmetric session key. While the session key is exchanged using asymmetric cryptography, the content encryption itself relies on symmetric cryptography for efficiency and speed. Question number 26. As part of his team's forensic investigation process, John signs out drives and other evidence from an evidence storage facility before working with them. What type of documentation is he creating? And the options are option A, chain of custody, option B, criminal, option C, civil, and option D, CYA. So remember, when working with the evidence in forensic investigation, the term used for documentation is chain of custody. So in most circumstances, it is a document like this, where it is written that who received the evidence, such as in this case John, who gave it, let's suppose LS, and then the date and the time of the evidence handing over is recorded, and this goes on as the evidence changes hands from one person to the other. So that is the concept of chain of custody. Explanation is that John is maintaining the chain of custody documentation for the electronic evidence, which is crucial for demonstrating that the evidence has not been tampered with. Proper chain of custody documentation helps ensure the integrity of the evidence and supports its validity in legal proceedings. Ideally, this process should involve multiple people to further safeguard against tampering. Question number 27. Sarah and John want to start communicating using a symmetric crypto system, but do not have a pre-arranged secret and cannot meet in person to exchange keys. Which algorithm can they use to securely exchange the secret keys? So remember, in symmetric algorithms, both the sender and receiver are both the parties. Let's suppose if we have two parties, they have the same key. The same key is used for encryption as well as decryption. So the problem with this symmetric algorithm is that how to exchange this key. So this question is about the exchange of this same symmetric key, and the options are option A, Diffie-Hellman, option B, RSA, option C, IDEA, and option D, MD5. So MD5 is basically a hashing algorithm. It is not used for exchange of keys. These are also encryption algorithms. So the correct term is Diffie-Hellman key exchange. This is the most popular key exchange algorithm. So the Diffie-Hellman algorithm enables the secure exchange of symmetric encryption keys over a public network. IDEA and RSA are encryption algorithms, while MD5 is a hashing function and not suitable for key exchange. Question number 28. Robert is designing a physical intrusion detection system for a sensitive media storage facility and needs technology that will issue an alert if communication lines of the alarm systems are unexpectedly cut. Which technology would be appropriate for this requirement? And the options are option A, heartbeat sensor, option B, motion detection, option C, Faraday cage, and option D, emanation security. And the correct option is, of course, the heartbeat sensor. So how does this work? Let's suppose here we have this media storage facility, and this is, let's suppose, the alarm system. and this alarm system is activated whenever there is intrusion inside this facility. So there is a heartbeat going on between this end of the alarm system and this end. And if someone heartbeat means that every 10 seconds or every minute or every 5 minutes a hello packet is sent from this to check for the availability and also from this end to this. So if this wire is cut, the alarm wire is cut, the heartbeat won't be received after, let's suppose, the one minute, and the monitoring system here will know that the wire is cut off. So the explanation is that heartbeat sensors are designed to send periodic status updates from the alarm system to the monitoring center. If the monitoring center does not receive a status message within a set time frame, it can trigger an alert indicating a disruption in communication lines. This technology is suitable for detecting if the alarm system's communication are unexpectedly cut. Question number 29. Daniel's employer creates PDF files as their primary work output, and Daniel wants to limit access to these files to individuals who have paid for them. What technology can he use to effectively control access to and distribution of these files? So we are talking about the digital PDF files and their access rights. And the options are: option A, DRM, digital right management. So this seems like the right option. Option B, encryption. Option C, digital signatures. And option D, EDM. And the correct option is option A, DRM, digital right management. So Daniel can use digital right management DRM technology to control access to and distribution of the PDF files, ensuring that only paying customers can access them. DRM is specifically designed for managing and enforcing usage rights. While it may not be flawless, it suits the need for restricting file access. Encryption and digital signatures can secure files and verify their origin but do not manage usage rights. And EDM, that is electronic dance music, is unrelated to this issue. Question number 10. Mark is setting up video sensors in remote locations and wants to perform as much image processing and computation as possible on the device itself before sending the results to the cloud. What computing model would best suit his needs? So this type of requirement is most common in the Internet of Things, where you have a lot of sensors employed and you want to make the computation as close to the sensor as possible instead of sending all the data to the cloud or the computation facility that is the main data center. So what type of computing is employed for this purpose? The options are: option A, edge computing; option B, serverless computing; option C, infrastructure as a service computing; and option D, software as a service computing. And the correct option is that the edge computing is used for this purpose. So this is how the edge computer looks like. As we can see, it is most commonly used in Internet of Things, where we have sensor employed and a lot of data is collected from these sensors, such as smart cars, video sensor, temperature sensors, and other sensors as well. And the data and the computation is made as close to the sensor as possible, known as edge. The computation is made as edge, and that's why this is called as the edge computer, and it is tried to send minimum information to the cloud or to the data center. Only the required and useful information is sent upward instead of sending these gigabyte or terabytes of data, which is bandwidth intensive as well as costly. So that's the concept of edge computing. So this is the explanation. Edge computing is the most suitable model for calls needs because it enables processing and computation to be performed directly on the device or at the edge of the network, reducing the amount of data and needs to be transmitted to the cloud. This approach helps handle limited connectivity and minimizes data transfer requirements, which is ideal for his remote video sensors. Question number 31. Susan wants to check the status of the industrial control systems used for building management. What type of systems should she inquire about? And the options are option A BAS, option B SCADA, option C DSS, and option D ICS-CSS. And the correct option is SCADA. So the SCADA or the supervisory control and data acquisition systems provide a graphical interface for monitoring and controlling industrial control systems. To review the status of these systems, Joanna should inquire, or in our case, Susan should inquire about access to her organization's SCADA systems. Question number 32. Alice has read permissions on an object and wants to give Bob the same rights. Which rule in the take grant protection model would allow her to perform this action? And the options are option A grant rule, option B create rule, option C remove rule, and option D take rule. So it is obvious that since Alice wants to give Bob the rights, so for giving the rights, the suitable rule is grant rule. Create rules is for creating new rules. Removing is for removing the existing rule, and take rule is taking someone else rights or someone else rights. So the correct option is the grant rule. So the grant rule in the take grant protection model permits a subject to grant the rights it holds on an object to another subject, enabling Alice to give Bob the same permission she has. Question number 33. Ethan, a cryptanalyst, has both an encrypted message and its decrypted version. He aims to use this information to retrieve the secret key and decrypt other messages. What type of attack is Ethan attempting? And the options are option A known plaintext, option B chosen ciphertext, option C chosen plaintext, and option D brute force. And the correct option is option A known plaintext. So in a known plaintext attack, the attacker has both the encrypted message and its corresponding plaintext. By analyzing the relationship between the two, the attacker attempts to retrieve the secret key. In contrast, a chosen plaintext attack allows the attacker to select the plaintext to be encrypted. A chosen ciphertext attack lets the attacker choose the ciphertext, and a brute force attack involves testing all possible key combinations to find the correct one. Question number 34. Betty, a software engineer, is developing a code that she wants to restrict to an isolated sandbox for security purposes. What software development technique is she using? And the options are option A confinement, option B bounds, option C input validation, and option D TCB. And the correct option is the confinement of code to an isolated environment is known as confinement. So using a sandbox is an example of confinement where the system limits the access of a process to ensure it cannot impact other processes or the overall system. This technique helps isolate and secure the execution of code. Question number 35. Lily wants to implement application control technology that allows user to install new application for research and testing while blocking non-malicious software. What type of application control would be appropriate? And the options are option A, blacklisting, option B, whitelisting, option C, gray listing, and option D, blue listing. So blacklisting is blacklisting non-malicious application that you know are malicious and blocking them. Whitelisting means allowing known good application and blocking all others. So in this case, since Lily wants to block the non-malicious application, the correct answer is blacklisting. So if the blacklisting approach is appropriate in this scenario, it permits users to install any software they need as long as it is not on the list of prohibited applications. This allows for flexibility in installing non-malicious software while block non-malicious software. Question number 36. Which of the following does not describe a standard physical security requirements for wiring closets? And the options are option A, place only in areas monitored by security guards. Option B, do not store flammable items in the closet. Option C, use sensors on doors to log entries. And option D, perform regular inspection of the closets. So these three seems like the suitable option to consider. While placing the closet only in areas monitored by guard is not a physical standard, is not a requirement for a standard physical security. Explanation is that although having wiring closets in area monitored by security guard is ideal, it is not always practical due to the need for multiple closets across various locations. The other options, avoiding flammable items, using sensors to log entries, and performing regular inspections, are standard physical security requirements for wiring closets. Question number 37. James configured permissions on an NTFS file system by listing each user individually to describe their access to a file. What did James create? And the options are option A, an access control list, option B, an access control entry, option C, role-based access control, and option D, mandatory access control. And since we have a list of multiple users, let's suppose we have 4 users and we have file and we have created a list of each user whether they can have access to this file or not. So this type of list is known as an access control list. So James created an access control list, that is ACL, and ACL consists of multiple access control entries and specifies which users have access to a file and their respective permissions. This approach is distinct from role-based access control, which assigns permissions based on user roles, and mandatory access control, which enforces permissions based on policies and classifications. Question number 38. Matthew needs to enforce access control that restrict user based on their previous activities, such as preventing access to data from a competitor once a consultant has accessed data from a client. What security model best fits this requirement? And the options are option A, Brewer-Nash model, option B, Clark-Wilson, option C, Bell-LaPadula, and option D, Biba. And the correct option is Brewer-Nash. So in the Brewer-Nash, if a user accesses a data from a client A organization and there is another organization, client B, which is competitor to client A. These both organizations are competitors. So This user cannot access data of the client B due to conflict of interest. So this mechanism is also, this model is therefore also known as Chinese wall, because we have a wall between these two competitors. Data created for this user. So the Breuer-Nash model, also known as the Chinese wall model, is designed to prevent conflict of interest by dynamically adjusting access control based on user's action. This model is suitable for environments like Matthews, where access to information is restricted based on previously accessed data, effectively preventing access to competing clients' information. Question number 39. Andrew finds the Mimikatz tool installed on a system in his environment while investigating a security breach. What type of attack has likely occurred? And the options are: option A, pass the hash; option B, password cracking; option C, MAC spoofing; and option D, ARP poisoning. And the correct option is option A, pass the hash. So Mimikatz is commonly used in pass the hash attacks to capture and utilize passwords hashes for accessing accounts in environments like Microsoft Active Directory. This tool can also be employed for credential dumping and other malicious activities related to password and hash exploitation. Question number 40. In scenario where Harry wants to access a document owned by Sally and stored on a file server, who or what is the subject of the resource request according to the subject object model? So Harry wants to access a file owned by Sally. So what is the subject? Harry, Sally, server, or the document? And the correct option is Harry, since Harry is the active entity that wants to access the file. So in the subject object model of access control, the user or the process making the request for a resource is the subject of that request. In this example, Harry is requesting resource access and is therefore the subject. Question number 41. Joshua's organization recently completed a user access review during which the auditor observed several instances of privilege creep. Which security principle was breached? Options are: option A, least privilege; option B, trust but verify; option C, fail securely; and option D, keep it simple. And the correct option is the least privilege principle. If you don't implement the least privilege, then you will have the privilege creep inside your organization. And what is privilege creep? Privilege creep is anyone having access privilege or access rights as opposed to the requirements. And most of the time these privileges or access rights are accumulated over time when the person changes roles from one appointment to the other, and the access rights from the previous appointments are not properly removed, and other rights according to the new appointments are given. So the access rights or privileges accumulates over time, and this results in the privilege creep. So the principle of least privilege requires that employees have only the minimum necessary permissions to perform their job functions. Privilege creep, where employees accumulate unnecessary permissions over time, breaches this principle. In contrast, trust but verify involves using audit to ensure controls are working as intended. Fail securely means that security controls should default to a secure state if they fail. And keep it simple suggests that security controls and technology should be as straightforward as possible while still achieving their objectives. Question number 42. What concept refers to the level of confidence an organization has that its controls meet security requirements? And the options are: option A, assurance; option B, trust; option C, credentialing; and option D, verification. And the correct option is option A, Assurance. So assurance represents the level of confidence an organization has that its security controls are properly implemented and effective. This confidence must be regularly monitored and verified to ensure ongoing effectiveness. Question number 43. Lucas is evaluating a system that has an EAL1, that is Evaluation Assurance Level 1, under the common criteria. What is the level of assurance associated with this evaluation level? And the options are: option A, it has been functionally tested; option B, it has been methodically designed, tested, and reviewed; option C, it has been structurally tested; and option D, it has been formally verified, designed, and tested. And the correct option is that EAL1 refers to the level that says that it has been functionally tested. These are all the 7 levels of common criteria ranging from EAL1 to EAL7 and what they refer to. So the EAL1 in this case is just functionally tested, and this is the lowest level of assurance. Question number 44. Steven wants to verify that a software package he downloaded matches the original version and is concerned about sophisticated attackers potentially replacing it with a compromised version. Which hashing tool should he use? And the options are: option A SHA-1, option B MD5, option C triple dash, and option D SHA-256. So SHA-1, MD5 and SHA-256, they are basically hashing tool. Triple dash is encryption algorithm. Out of these three, SHA-256 is the most suitable one because these two are weak and vulnerable, and they have their weaknesses, and collusion attacks are possible against these hashing algorithms. Therefore, the correct option is SHA-256. Given that MD5 and SHA-1 are vulnerable to intentional collisions and triple dash is not a hashing tool, SHA-256 is the most secure choice for verifying the integrity of the software package. It offers a higher level of protection against sophisticated attacks. Question number 45. Most cryptographic algorithms operate in either block mode or, so most cryptographic algorithms have two modes. They either operate in the block mode. What is the other mode? And the options are: option A cipher mode, option B stream mode, option C decrypt mode, and option D encrypt mode. And the correct option is the stream mode. So the block mode basically refers to that in the block mode data is broken down into fixed size blocks, such as, let's suppose, 1 to 8 bits block, and each block is encrypted individually, while in stream mode data is processed 1 bit or byte at a time, and the encryption depends on the current state of the algorithm. Question number 46. Chris is a security administrator for the US federal government and needs to select a digital signature approach that complies with the federal digital signature standards, that is FIPS 186-4. Which of the following encryption algorithm is not an approved choice for digital signatures under this standard? And we have four options: option A RSA, option B DSA, option C ECDSA, and option D Havel. And the correct option is option D Havel. So the digital signature standard as per FIPS 186-4 approves the following encryption algorithms for digital signatures: DSA, the digital signature algorithms; RSA, Rivest, Shamir, Edelman; and ECDSA, elliptic curve digital signature algorithm. Havel is a hash function, not an encryption algorithm, and therefore is not an acceptable choice for digital signatures under this standard. Question number 47. After Charles has securely wiped the drive, reinstalled the operating system and patched the machine and applied security templates, but the system immediately reconnects to the same botnet, where should he investigate for the persistent malware? So even after reinstalling the operating system and wiping the hard drive, the malware still exists. What's the reason? Options are the system BIOS or firmware. Option B, the operating system partition. Option C, the installation media. And option D, the system memory. And the correct option is the system BIOS or firmware. Even after reinstalling the operating system and wiping out the hard drive, it does not affect the BIOS or firmware. So if the malware is inside the BIOS or firmware, it will still exist after reinstalling the operating system and wiping the drive. Given the situation, it is most likely that Charles is dealing with malware embedded in the system BIOS or firmware. This type of infection can persist across operating system reinstalls and is challenging to detect and remove. Question number 48. James is working with the Department of Defense system that can handle information classified at both the secret and top secret levels simultaneously. What type of system is this? And the options are option A, single state, option B, unclassified, option C, compartmented, and option D, multi-state. And the correct option is a system that can work at the secret and top secret state simultaneously is a multi-state system. So a multi-state system is designed to handle information classified at different levels, such as secret and top secret simultaneously. This type of system uses various protection mechanisms to ensure that data is properly segregated and secured according to its classification. Question number 49. What type of motion detector senses changes in the electromagnetic fields in the monitored areas? And the options are option A, capacitance, option B, infrared, option C, wave pattern, and option D, photoelectric. So we are talking about electromagnetic field, and the correct option is capacitance. So capacitance motion detectors are designed to detect changes in electromagnetic field within a monitored area, allowing them to sense motion effectively. Question number 50. Mia suspects that an attacker might have used a DNS poisoning attack to eavesdrop on HTTPS communication. After poisoning the DNS, what method would an attacker most likely use to intercept these communication? And the options are option A, man in the middle, option B, brute force, option C, timing, and option D, meet in the middle. And the correct option is option A, man in the middle. So this is how a DNS poisoning attacks occur. So let's suppose this is a DNS server. This is an attacker. The attacker basically infects a DNS entry. Let's suppose this is a real website. The attacker infects the entry, and instead of the real website, a fake website is registered against this real website IP address. So when the client requests, instead of giving him or giving her this real website entry, he or she is directed to the fake website. So once the user is directed to the fake website, the attacker then can use the man in the middle attack to eavesdrop on this communication. Since this website is owned by the attacker, he or she can now intercept the communication using man in the middle. attack. So the technique would allow the attacker to intercept HTTPS communications after conducting a DNS poisoning attack is known as man-in-the-middle attack. In this attack, the attacker intercepts and relays communication between the user and the legitimate server, enabling eavesdropping on the contents of the communication. So that's all for this video. Please like the video and subscribe. I will soon be uploading the video for domain 4 and all the remaining domains as well. So keep in touch, stay tuned, and take care. Bye.